My grandson Ben came down the stairs from my bedroom, and the color had drained from his face. He was still in his paramedic uniform, having come straight from his shift, which usually made me so proud. He'd only stopped by to drop off some groceries, a new routine he'd started. But he'd gone upstairs to fix a loose railing, and now he was looking at me with an expression I'd never seen before. It was a cold, clinical fear. He stopped on the bottom step and looked at me, his voice tight. "Grandma, that 7-day pill organizer on your dresser? Who filled it?" I was confused by the question as it seemed so obvious to me. "Amelia, dear, your aunt. She does it every Sunday, you know that." I tried to laugh it off, but the sound caught in my dry throat. "She says my old hands shake too much to sort them. Why?" Ben didn't answer me, but instead rushed across the kitchen to where I sat. He unzipped his medical bag, pulled out his blood pressure cuff, and wrapped it tightly around my arm. "Ben, really, I'm fine. Just a little tired," I protested. He ignored me, his focus absolute as he pumped the bulb, his eyes fixed on the bouncing needle of the sphygmomanometer. "What is it, Ben? You're frightening me." He didn't answer, his other hand already on my wrist, fingers pressing against my pulse, his eyes on his watch. "Your pressure is 80/50. Your heart rate is 45. He let the cuff fall, and his hands, so steady during emergencies, were trembling slightly. He looked me dead in the eyes, his voice urgent. "Did you take your Tuesday morning pill today?" I nodded slowly, my head starting to swim from his sudden panic. "Yes, just like every morning. The blue one." He cursed under his breath, a word I'd never heard him use before, and sprinted into my bathroom. I heard the clatter and crash of plastic bottles as he emptied my medicine cabinet onto the tiled floor. He returned a moment later, holding 2 orange prescription vials in his left hand and the small blue pill from my Tuesday slot in his right. "This is your metoprolol. This is your lisinopril," he said, shaking the bottles. The pills inside were white and peach, not blue. Then he held up the single blue pill. "This is not one of them." My heart, which he just said was beating too slowly, suddenly felt like it was trying to hammer its way out of my chest. "But Amelia, she wouldn't." "Grandma, we have to go to the hospital right now," he commanded, his paramedic voice taking over completely. He grabbed my purse from the counter and took my arm, pulling me to my feet. "Get your coat. Do not call Amelia. Do not call anyone. We leave through the garage." I stared at him, my mind unable to catch up. He had the eyes of my late husband, Arthur. They were eyes that saw details others missed. They were eyes that never got things wrong. My kitchen phone started ringing, its shrill sound splitting the silence. I glanced at the caller ID. Amelia. Ben saw it too. He didn't pause. He squeezed my arm gently but firmly. "Don't answer it, Grandma. We have to go. Walk with me." And like that, I was being led out of my own home, a prisoner of a truth I didn't yet understand, my daughter's name flashing accusingly on the ringing phone behind us. This terrible morning hadn't even started with Ben. It started 3 hours earlier, the same way every morning had for the last 3 months. I woke up and the room was spinning. Not just dizzy, but a thick, soupy vertigo that made the ceiling tilt and the floor feel unstable. A heavy cognitive fog settled over me before I even opened my eyes. I gripped the nightstand, my nails digging into the wood, waiting for the world to stop moving. My doctor, a kind young man who looked like he'd never been sick a day in his life, called it age-related cognitive decline. I hated that phrase. It felt like a dismissal, a polite way of saying I was losing my mind, a diagnosis of irrelevance. My own mother had slipped away into the gray twilight of Alzheimer's, and I was terrified I was walking the same path, one clumsy, forgetful step at a time.
Last week was the worst. I'd put the kettle on for tea, then went to water the roses in the front garden. The next thing I knew, my neighbor was banging on the front door, shouting. I'd run back inside to a kitchen filled with acrid smoke. The kettle was a melted piece of metal, the burner glowing cherry red. I had stood there, shaking, not from fear, but from the chilling realization that I didn't remember walking outside. I didn't remember the roses at all. That was the day I truly started to believe I was becoming a danger to myself. I looked at the silver-framed photo on my nightstand. My late husband, Dr. Arthur Hayes, smiled back at me. It was taken the day he received an award for pharmaceutical research, his eyes brilliant and sharp. Arthur was a pharmacist, but he was really a scientist, a man of precise logic. I remember once, our neighbor Martha was given a new heart medication. Arthur glanced at the vial as she was leaving our house and stopped her. "Martha," he said gently, "this is propranolol. Your chart says you have asthma. This pill could kill you." He'd spent an hour on the phone with her doctor, correcting the prescription. He'd saved her life with a single glance. "The body is a system, Eleanor," he always said. "Everything has a cause. Nothing is random." I missed that certainty. I missed him. He would have known what to do with this fog. He would have deconstructed my symptoms, found the root cause, and fixed it. But Arthur was gone, and I was alone, sitting on the edge of my bed trying to clutch the fraying edges of my own mind. That wasn't entirely true, of course. My daughter, Amelia, had been my savior. Right as this fog began 3 months ago, almost as if she sensed it, Amelia started coming by every single day. She bustled in, full of concern and competence, taking charge of the things I was beginning to let slip. "Mom, you're forgetting your medications, I can tell," she'd said one afternoon, her voice thick with worry. "Look, you missed Sunday entirely. You can't do that, it's dangerous." Before I could protest, she had gathered all my prescription bottles from the bathroom. "Let me handle this," she'd insisted. "It's one less thing for you to worry about." She came back with a lovely blue 7-day pill organizer, each slot neatly filled. "See? All set for the week. You just take what's in the box." I had wept with gratitude. Amelia had always been a bit distant, but now, when I needed her most, she was here. She even proved to me how bad my memory was getting. "Mom, where are your car keys?" she'd asked 2 weeks ago. I'd insisted they were on the hook by the door. We searched for 30 minutes before she finally found them, inside the refrigerator next to the milk. "Oh, Mom," she'd said, her voice so full of pity it made me flush with shame. "You see, you need me." I didn't remember putting them there. I couldn't remember it at all. She started helping with my phone calls, too. "Mom needs her rest," I'd hear her telling my friends from the garden club. "Her mind is just tired. It's better if you just call me directly. I'll pass along the message." The calls eventually slowed and mostly stopped. My house grew quieter, which she assured me was better for my nerves. Then came the special supplements. She started brewing a special herbal tea for me every morning, something she said a naturopath recommended for memory. It was bitter with a strange metallic aftertaste I hated. "It's strong, Mom, but the bitterness means it's working," she'd say, watching me drink it. She also brought over large, expensive canisters of a nutrient powder, mixing it into a thick shake for me every afternoon. "This will fill in the gaps the doctors are missing," she promised. It tasted like chalk and anise, but I drank it all. I trusted her completely. I believed her concern was a blessing, a daughter finally stepping up to care for her aging mother. I had no idea it was a meticulously constructed plan, a poison delivered with a loving smile.
Ben didn't use the main highway. He drove his truck through a series of winding side streets, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, his eyes constantly checking the rearview mirror. I sat in the passenger seat, my body thrumming with a strange, cold vibration. The dizziness was still there, but it was now eclipsed by a terrifying, sharp-edged clarity. The phone I'd left behind, Amelia, ringing and ringing, the blue pill in Ben's hand, the numbers, 80/50. I'd been a nurse's aide before I married Arthur. I knew what those numbers meant. They were low, dangerously low. We weren't just going to the doctor, we were fleeing a crime scene. And I was the evidence. We screeched to a halt at the ambulance bay of St. Jude's Hospital, the place Ben worked. He didn't park in the visitor's lot. He pulled right up to the entrance as if he were driving the rig himself. He was out of the truck before the engine was off, pulling me from the passenger side. He didn't lead me to the waiting room. He half carried me through the double doors, bypassing the triage desk completely, his voice booming with an authority I had never heard him from. "I need a room, now, attending, stat." A charge nurse, a woman I recognized him mentioning, named Brenda, looked up, her expression shifting from annoyance to alarm when she saw his face. "Ben, what's wrong? What's going on? Is this your grandmother?" "It's her," he said, pushing me gently onto a gurney that was immediately rolled over by a resident. "I need a room, now, attending, stat," he repeated, louder this time, commanding the space. He was a different person, not my grandson. He was a professional. He followed the gurney as they pushed me into a trauma bay, rattling off information, his voice crisp and clear. 68 female, altered mental status, severe bradycardia and hypotension, vitals 80/50, pulse 45. Patient states she's been foggy and dizzy for 3 months, diagnosed as cognitive decline. He continued, his voice echoing in the bay. "I suspect chronic multi-drug overdose intentional. I have the suspected agents with me." They were on me in an instant. A flurry of blue scrubs. An IV line was slid into my arm, cold fluid rushing into my veins. An oxygen mask was placed over my face. Electrodes were stuck to my chest. I watched the green line of my own heartbeat on the monitor. Beep, beep, beep. It was just as he'd said. Slow, far too slow. I wasn't Eleanor Hayes, the retiree. I was a specimen, a victim. I was the body in a mystery novel. Ben handed Brenda the plastic baggie containing the single blue pill. He then produced 2 more baggies I hadn't seen him grab, one with a scoop of the chalky nutrient powder from my canister and another with the damp dark leaves from the herbal tea tin. "Send these to the lab. I want them analyzed. Establish a chain of custody. This is evidence." He then looked the attending physician, Dr. Chen, right in the eye. "Run a full tox screen, a 12-lead EKG, and a full metabolic panel. Check her digoxin and beta blocker levels, and get a crash cart on standby, now." Ben stood by the gurney, his hand on my shoulder, but his eyes were on the monitor. "Ben?" I whispered, my voice muffled by the mask. How did you know?" He finally looked down at me, his eyes softening for just a second, and I saw my grandson again. "Grandpa Arthur," he said, his voice quiet, "he taught me to look at the whole system, not just the symptoms. You told me you were foggy, forgetful. The doctor said age, but I saw you last week. You were sharp. Age doesn't happen in 3 months, Grandma, not like this. It's not a fog, it's a suppression," he continued, his voice a low, angry rumble. "Your symptoms, dizziness, confusion, nausea, weakness, they matched age-related decline, but they also perfectly matched chronic digitalis poisoning. But it was your pulse that screamed at me. 45? That's not age. That's a textbook beta blocker overdose. That's a medical intervention." I tried to process his words. "But the pills, Amelia, she wouldn't." "I looked at the blue pill in the organizer," he said, cutting me off. "It had an imprint, M100.
I didn't recognize it, so I ran a search on my phone. It's metoprolol, 100 milligrams. Your prescription, the real one, is 25. Just as he said the words 100 milligrams, the monitor beside me let out a long, continuous, terrifying beep. The green line went flat. Dr. Chen, who had just walked in, shouted, "She's in VFib! Crash cart! Now! Get the pads on her!" Ben was shoved aside by two nurses. "Ben, get out of the way!" one yelled. I saw his face, pale and horrified, as they ripped open my gown. "Charging to 200, Dr. Chen yelled. "Clear!" My entire body seized and jumped off the gurney. The monitor blipped, then beep. No rhythm. Again, charging to 300. Clear. Another jolt. This one so hard my teeth clicked. For a second, nothing. Then beep, beep, beep. The slow, steady rhythm returned. Dr. Chen was sweating, breathing hard. That was close, Ben. Whatever she took, it's destabilizing her fast. Get the digibind. Now, we need to reverse this. The world swam back into focus. I was alive. I was alive. And my daughter had nearly just killed me from miles away using a pill she'd given me that morning. The lab results came back while they were wheeling me out of the bay, up to the cardiac care unit. Dr. Chen read them from a tablet, her face grim. Confirmed. Her blood is saturated with digoxin, potassium is critical, and the metoprolol levels are sky high. She looked at me. The lab confirmed the samples. The tea is 90% dried oleander leaves. The nutrient powder was laced with more crushed beta blockers, probably to mask the taste. This wasn't an accident. This was a sophisticated, systematic attempt to induce heart failure. I finally let the tears come, hot and silent, rolling into the oxygen mask. I'm not going crazy. No, ma'am, Dr. Chen said, her voice softening. You're being murdered. They put me in a private room on the cardiac floor. Ben stayed, a silent guard at the door. 10 minutes later, a man in a rumpled suit walked in. He looked exhausted. "I'm Detective Miller," he said. He had the same tired eyes as Arthur had after a 48-hour shift. Ben explained everything, fast, logical, just as he had in the ER. The pills, the tea, the timeline, the phone calls. Miller listened, taking notes in a small spiral-bound book, not interrupting once. He seemed completely unfazed, as if he heard stories like this every day. "This is the most cold-blooded attempt I've seen this year," Miller said, finally snapping his notebook shut. "We need the why," Miller said, turning to me. "Why would she do this, Mrs. Hayes? Is there money? An inheritance?" I felt a hot flush of shame. My husband, Arthur, he was a brilliant man. He and Amelia, they never saw eye to eye. He always championed Ben. He saw himself in Ben. Arthur always said Ben had the diagnostic eye he'd tried to teach Amelia. I took a shaky breath. Arthur left a trust, a significant educational fund, for Ben to go to medical school. Amelia, she always resented it. She felt it was her right as her only child. Ben squeezed my shoulder. "There's more, isn't it, Grandma? When I was over last week, before I knew, you said you were meeting with your lawyer." "Yes," I said, the words feeling like stones in my mouth. "Last month, I formalized my own will. I'm paying for the rest of Ben's medical school tuition, and I left him the house. It's paid off. I thought Amelia was financially secure. I just wanted Arthur's legacy of healing to be safe." Miller made a sharp sound, a tisk of understanding. "A will change. That's usually the trigger."
"It's not just that," Ben said, his voice low. "Aunt Amelia, she's been acting strange. She sold her car last month. Said it was for environmental reasons, but she loved that car. She's been wearing the same clothes. When I saw her last, she looked frantic." Miller nodded, his face grim. He pulled out his phone. "That's probable cause. Give me a minute." He stepped into the hallway, his voice a low murmur. "Yeah, this is Miller. I'm at St. Jude's with a DA candidate for a homicide attempt. I need an expedited financial workup on an Amelia Hayes, 45, last known address." While he was gone, a nurse came in. "Mrs. Hayes, your daughter Amelia is on the phone. She sounds very upset. She says she's at your house and you're not answering. She says you missed your daily checking call. She's frantic and she's saying she's on her way here." My heart leapt into my throat. "She's coming," I whispered to Ben. "She's coming now." The timeline had just collapsed. The killer was mobile. Ben's face hardened. He looked at the nurse. Tell her she just got here, that she's confused but stable. Tell her the doctor is with her, but she can come to the CCU waiting room." The nurse nodded and left. Miller walked back in, his face dark. "Okay, here it is. Your grandson called it. She's not just resentful. She's desperate." He showed me the screen of his phone, a rapid response credit file. "She's $230,000 in debt. Online casinos, mostly. We have her flagged on 3 different high-stakes servers. But this is the kicker." He pointed to a line item. 3 outstanding high-interest loans. Loan sharks. Her house is in foreclosure. The auction date is in 30 days. I felt sick. "She's out of time," Miller said. "She needed your estate, and she needed it now. The will change. She must have found out. It pushed her over the edge." I looked at Ben. "The sickness. It started 3 months ago, right when her finances must have completely collapsed. The will change last month. That must have been her deadline. Grandpa always said the deadliest poison is the one given by the most trusted hand. He was talking about medical history, but God, he was talking about her. She's on her way," I said to Miller. "The nurse just told us." Miller's eyes lit up. "Okay, this is our chance. We have the poisoning. That's a solid 20-year case. But if she comes here to finish the job, That's life without parole. I want to catch her in the act, not just for the poisoning, but for the intent to murder. What do you mean? I asked, my voice trembling. You're going to arrest her? We're going to give her the chance to arrest herself. He looked at Dr. Chin, who had just re-entered. Doctor, I need a favor. I need a secure room, one with an observation window. The CCU step-down unit has them, room 305. Why? We're moving, Mrs. Hayes. We're putting an undercover officer in her bed. We'll tell the front desk that Eleanor Hayes is in room 305. She's stable, but confused, and is not to be disturbed. But if her daughter, her healthcare proxy, insists, she will, Ben said. She'll see it as her last chance. Exactly, Miller said. She'll come to check on her mother. She'll find our officer. We'll be watching. Watching? I asked. From where? From the observation room right next door. We can see and hear everything. Ben, you'll be with me. Miller looked kindly at me. Mrs. Hayes, you'll be safe down the hall. No, I said, surprising myself with the strength in my voice. If my daughter, if she's going to do this, I need to see it. I need to know. Ben started to protest. Grandma, no, it's too much. But Miller held up a hand. He studied my face for a long moment. All right, he said. You'll be in the room with us, but you stay silent. Understood? They moved me to the observation room. It was small, dark, and smelled like stale coffee. A large one-way mirror looked directly into room 305. I watched as a young female officer, Russo, climbed into the gurney and pulled the sheet up to her chin, turning her face away from the door. Ben stood next to me, his hand resting on my shoulder. Miller sat at the console, speaking into a small microphone to the CCU nurses station, giving them instructions. Just act normal. She asks to see her mother, you tell her 305, but that she's sleeping. No one else gets in. The wait was agonizing. An hour passed. My heart, now beating at a more normal rhythm thanks to the antidote, still felt like it was going to fail, but this time from suspense. Just then, a small ping sounded from the console. CCU elevator, Miller said, his voice all business. He clicked a camera feed. My heart stopped. It was her, Amelia. She wasn't hysterical the way a daughter worried about her mother should be. She was calm, composed. Her hair was perfect. She looked focused. She walked to the nurse's station. I watched the monitor, holding my breath as she spoke to the nurse, her face a mask of practiced concern. I'm here to see my mother, Eleanor Hayes. I'm her healthcare proxy. I've been calling all morning. Is she all right? The nurse, a brilliant actress, looked at her computer. Oh, yes, Miss Hayes. She's here. She was brought in quite confused, but her vitals are stable. She's in room 305, just down the hall. The doctor said she's resting. Please try not to wake her. Thank you so much, Amelia said, clasping her hands. She walked down the hall. My breath caught. But she didn't go to the room. She stopped halfway down the hall, pulled out her cell phone, and leaned against the wall as if sending a text. What is she doing? Miller whispered. She took the bait. Why isn't she going in? Ben tensed beside me. She's testing the trap. Just then, my cell phone, which Miller had placed on the console, buzzed. A text message. From Amelia. It read, Mom, the nurse says you're in 305. Are you okay? Please text me back. I'm scared. I looked at Miller, horrified. It's a test. If I'm confused, I can't text. If I'm asleep, I can't text. But if I'm awake and Ben just brought me here, I would text. Ben's face was grim. She's checking if you're conscious or if I'm with you. She's smarter than we thought.
We watched the monitor. Amelia was pacing now, looking at her phone. The seconds stretched. Ping, another text. Mom, please, I'm right outside. Just let me know you're okay. I'm sorry about everything. I love you. She's playing, I whispered, bile rising in my throat. She's trying to get a response. Or maybe she's actually sorry. No, Ben said, his voice cold. Look at her eyes. She's not looking at the room. She's looking at the elevator. She's waiting to see if the text summons anyone, like me. If I came running, she'd know the plan was blown. After a full minute of silence, Amelia's entire demeanor changed. The worried mask fell away. She put her phone in her pocket. Her face was cold. She took a deep breath, like a diver before a plunge, and started walking toward 305.
She thinks you're unconscious, Miller breathed. She's going in. Russo, get ready. Amelia reached the door, paused, looked both ways down the empty hall, and slipped inside the curtain. We watched her look down at the fake me. She didn't speak. She didn't check the vitals. She didn't whisper, Mom. She didn't even try to wake her. She just stood there for a second, her back to the hidden camera, confirming the patient was asleep. Then she reached into her designer purse and pulled out a 10cc syringe with a long needle already filled with a clear liquid. I stopped breathing. Everything in that small, dark observation room seemed to shrink to a single point. The monitor. On it, my daughter, Amelia, was standing over the hospital bed, holding a syringe. Ben gripped my shoulder, his fingers digging in so hard I thought the bone might crack, but I felt no pain. I only felt a penetrating, icy cold. Right now, Detective Miller whispered into his collar mic, signaling his team, Delta Team, go! On the screen, Amelia raised the syringe, holding it up to the dim light of the hospital room. She checked it, flicking the side of the barrel with a practiced, horrifying professionalism. She wasn't shaking. She looked at the figure in the bed, at Officer Russo's face turned to the wall, and she whispered. The sound crackled, thin and reedy over our speaker. I'm sorry, Mom, she said. Her voice wasn't one of grief. It was a cold, flat justification. I'm truly sorry, but I have no choice. I can't lose the house. She paused, her breath hissing out. I can't lose to him, she spat. And I knew, with sickening certainty, she meant Ben. He always loved him more. It was always Ben this, Ben that. Now he leaves him the house, too. She leaned down, her other hand fumbling for the IV port on the officer's arm. His legacy, it was supposed to be mine. My heart, which had been so carefully repaired by the antidote, felt like it was tearing apart all over again. This wasn't just about debt. This was about jealousy, a jealousy that had festered for decades, as toxic as the oleander tea she'd brewed for me. The instant the tip of that needle touched the plastic port, Officer Russo moved. Her hand, the one Amelia believed belonged to a frail, dying woman, shot out like a viper, clamping around Amelia's wrist in a steel grip. I think you do have a choice, Russo growled, surging up from the bed. Amelia screamed. It wasn't a scream of fear. It was a shriek of pure, undiluted rage, the sound of a cornered animal. She tried to yank her hand free, tried to jam the needle into Russo's arm, into anything. No, let go of me. The door to room 305 burst open. Detective Miller plunged in first, gun drawn, followed by Ben and two uniformed officers. Police, drop the syringe. Drop it. Now! Miller shouted. Amelia froze. She saw Miller, she saw the two officers, and then she saw Ben standing tall and furious right behind them. Finally, her eyes found me, standing trembling in the doorway, supported by another officer. Her face collapsed. The cold composure, the focus, it all shattered. She saw me, not sick, not confused, not dying. She saw me witnessing. Mom, she whispered, her voice cracking. No, it's not. She... Amelia's mind couldn't connect the pieces. She knew she was trapped. It's not fair.
she wailed, the sound echoing down the sterile hospital corridor. She began to struggle, a wild, desperate thrashing against the officers. "It's not fair. I took care of her. I was there. I made her tea. I sorted her pills. And she gave everything to him." She jerked her head toward Ben, tears of rage and self-pity streaming down her face. "That house was mine. It was supposed to be mine. I deserved it."
Detective Miller calmly used a pair of evidence tweezers to pick up the syringe, which it clattered to the floor. He dropped it into a plastic evidence tube. "Amelia Hayes," he said, his voice devoid of all emotion, "you are under arrest for attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. You have the right to remain silent." The fight went out of her. She slumped against the officers, her whole body shaking with sobs. "I'm in so much trouble," she wept. They're going to break my legs. The men I owe, they're going to... Oh, God, I'm ruined." It was pathetic. She wasn't crying because she had tried to kill her mother. She was crying because her plan had failed and because she was afraid of her loan sharks. I stepped forward, my legs shaking but my voice clear. "Amelia?" She flinched, her head snapping up. She looked at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of hatred and fear. "Arthur?" I said, my voice quiet but carrying in the sudden silence of the room. "My husband, your father, he left Ben that money to heal people." I pointed at the evidence tube in Miller's hand. "And you used his legacy. You used his knowledge to try and kill." "You don't understand," she shrieked. "You never understood. You just lived in your perfect house with his perfect memory. You don't know what it's like out there. The debt, the pressure." "Oh, I understand," I said, feeling the last of my fog clear, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. "I understand that you are your father's daughter, but you are not his legacy. Get her away from me." I turned my back on her as the officers led her away, her wails of, "It wasn't supposed to be like this," echoing behind us. Ben put his arm around me, and I leaned on him, every one of my 68 years pressing down on me like a physical weight. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal proceedings. There was no trial. There was no need. The evidence was overwhelming. A perfect case built by my daughter's own arrogance. They had the lab results from the pills, the powder, and the tea. They had the blood work from the hospital, showing lethal levels of 2 different cardiotoxins. They had the security footage from the hospital hallway. And most damning of all, they had the high-definition recording from the hidden camera in room 305, showing Amelia's confession and her attempt to inject Officer Russo. Amelia's lawyers tried to plead insanity, cognitive distress due to her financial ruin, but the prosecution pointed to the 3 months of systematic, calculated poisoning. This wasn't a crime of passion, it was a project. They showed her internet search history, lethal dose of digitalis, how to mimic heart failure in the elderly. Does oleander tea show up in autopsy? She researched it, she planned it, she executed it. Her only mistake was Ben. She had underestimated Arthur's real legacy. The sentencing hearing was on a Tuesday, the same day of the week she had assigned me my special blue pill. I sat in the front row, Ben's hand holding mine. When the judge asked if I wished to make a victim impact statement, I stood. I didn't look at Amelia. I looked at the judge. "Your Honor, my husband, Dr. Arthur Hayes, was a pharmacist. He dedicated his life to the precise, ethical use of medicine to save lives. He believed in it. He taught his grandson," I motioned to Ben, "that the greatest calling was to heal."
My daughter, she took that same knowledge, she perverted it. She used her father's own field of study to turn my food into poison and my medicine into a weapon. She did this not in a moment of anger, but slowly, day by day for 3 months. She did it while smiling at me, while telling me she loved me. I finally turned and looked at her.
She was thinner, sallow, her expensive clothes replaced by an ill-fitting orange jumpsuit. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She did not just try to kill my body. She tried to kill my mind. She tried to make me believe I was insane. And for that, I will never forgive her. She is not my daughter. She is just his failed experiment. I sat down. Ben squeezed my hand. The judge was merciless. He called her actions a monstrous breach of the most sacred trust and sentenced her to 25 years to life with no possibility of parole for 20. I felt nothing. Not relief, not sadness, just empty. The system had worked. It was over. We sold the house. I couldn't stay there. I couldn't sleep in that bedroom knowing what she had planned. I couldn't even sit in my own kitchen, remembering the bitter taste of that herbal tea. It was tainted. We sold it, and all the equity, the money Amelia had been willing to kill for, I put into a new trust, the Dr. Arthur Hayes Foundation for Ethical Pharmaceutical Research. His name, his real legacy, would be used to fund students exactly like Ben. 2 years later, I sat in a large auditorium. I was wearing my best dress. I was no longer dizzy. I was no longer foggy. I was just proud. On the stage, a line of young men and women were being called one by one. The dean of the medical school was speaking, and now graduating with high honors and the recipient of the inaugural Arthur Hayes Memorial Scholarship, Dr. Ben Hayes. Ben walked across the stage, his robes billowing. He looked so much like his grandfather. He shook the dean's hand, took his diploma, and looked out into the crowd. He found my eyes, and he smiled. Later, at the reception, he found me. "We did it, Grandma," he said, hugging me tight. I reached into my purse. "Your grandfather," I said, my voice thick, "wanted you to have this." I pressed it into his hand. It was Arthur's old pen, a simple, heavy, gold-plated fountain pen. It was the pen he used to sign his dissertation, the one he used to write his first prescriptions. "He used it to heal," I said. "Now it's your turn." Ben held it, his eyes shining. "Thank you, Grandma. I'll protect it, I promise." "I know you will," I said, patting his hand. That night, I sat in my new, smaller apartment, looking out over the city lights. I thought about Amelia in her cell. I thought about Ben with his new degree. And I thought about Arthur. I finally understood what he meant, that everything has a cause. My daughter's actions weren't random. They were the result of a lifetime of jealousy, of greed, of resentment. And Ben's actions, they were the result of a lifetime of love, of integrity, of a legacy. Not a legacy of money, but a legacy of character. My story is over, but it makes me wonder, looking back, do you think people are who they are? Or do you think the small choices we make every day, the choice to heal or the choice to hurt, are what truly decide our fate? Let me know what you think.